Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the BrandFathers. This week we've got a jam-packed show. We at the BrandFathers here are doing marketing informationals. We share our wisdom over a long career in marketing, but we're also doing and introducing marketing confessionals this week where Warren will tell you more about that here in a second, but it is going to be good and a regular segment of our show. This week, we're going to start with dishonest ad industries. Like, what are the most dishonest ads and marketing campaigns you've ever seen? I feel like we take a lot of them for granted, but there are plenty out there. We are going to talk about the Formula One Ferrari, the introduction of the legendary Lewis Hamilton, who just switched over to an iconic brand at Ferrari. We'll touch a little bit on Ohio State winning the CFP and some great copy that they've done over there. The Progresso soup drops, though, are going to round out the CPG section for us. And then, of course, the BrandFathers are here, but we do not have our full brand guidelines ready to go yet. And so we are going to talk to you through that process, what that might look like, what we need. Currently operating with Jordan as the chief design officer and my Adobe Express limited design skills. So forgive our design elements. And then we're going to hit several other things. OpenAI, operators. We've got some fatherhood segments as we are the brand fathers, maybe Bud Light's attempt to return for Super Bowl, and breaking the fourth wall, how athletes and politicians can use social. But without further ado, let's kick off. Gentlemen, how are we today?
We're good, and we're ready for the marketing confessional. We've been stoked for this all week. So if you're not following Ashwin's social media, we've been noticing that people will, whenever we post content about a big campaign or anything, we'll have people in our DMs be like, "Oh, I worked on that. The CMO is a nightmare. You know, like the CEO insisted that his wife do the copy, whatever it is." And so we are taking this show on the road where we are soliciting the responses, and Ashwin's DMs have been flooded with insider information, and we are going to put anonymous stories out there around things that have happened behind some of your favorite marketing campaigns. I wish I had the choir from Gangster's Paradise like in here right now. Or exactly, we'll get the production rising on this to be able to do that so we could kick in. But Ashwin, you want to give us our first marketing confessional of the BrandFathers podcast?
Absolutely. I'm going to need a voice changer for this one. So
Yes, that's right. Think shrouded figure, think shadowy, think like digitized voice.
all right, our first marketing confessional. I had to work on the bomb of Quaker oat milk twice. We lost $20 million, launched to distribution in 18 months. Total ego shit show at the top. So we're all familiar with Quaker oats.
Legendary Amish go-to-market strategy.
Suite of products. So I said, I don't even remember that launch. You have to tell me more about what's happening here.
Hey, before there was trad wives, like the traditional lifestyle, there was Quaker.
There was Quaker Oats, brother. Yeah.
There was Quaker Oats.
Yeah.
So what did Quaker Oats try to do? Where are their mistakes here? So they tried to position it as a premium product. So the bottle, the price point, the functional benefit, when Quaker at its core is mainstream. They failed several times prior trying to upscale in their primary oatmeal category.
Yeah, luckily, it looks premium. So
So it looks premium, and I mean, maybe.
I'm being facetious.
Yeah. For those of you who can't see, we do have it up here on the screen. If you're listening on Spotify, there's video podcast available, or you can watch it on YouTube. But we've got green, blue, and red bottles here. There's something about
identical looking.
Is there something about primary colors I've heard that you like shouldn't do in food, or am I making that up?
I mean, looking at this, that seems right.
This looks like medicine.
That checks. Yes. Oh, it does. It looks like cough syrup.
Yeah, the core call out is heart healthy, which is not what you think about. We'll talk about the second key glaring issue here. But then they have this milk kind of swooping in like it's I think the front pack of Lactaid for like lactose intolerant people has that same like milk swoosh on there. So this is not looking good. A lot of design crimes here.
And so for oat beverage, is that what you're going to say is the biggest crime in there? All right, go ahead. Okay, keep going.
The name oat beverage instead of oat milk.
Beverage.
Second issue. Pepsi was scared of Big Dairy, who says milk equals a form from a mammal. But oat beverage as a name draws confusion, especially at that time. Now, this time was 2018. I think it would draw confusion then. I think it would draw confusion today, right? It is one of those things where you have to understand what the consumer language is and explaining things and trying to change that. Call it oat beverage. The question is, what's in there?
So I'm saying if I was hitting this, it would be I have the trademark Quaker dark blue. We start with the dark blue sleeve. Then we got our guy, the oat maker, bigger. I'm saying, and, and maybe he's spicing up a bit. Maybe he's got a plow. Maybe he's milking an udder. Whatever it might be. We're gonna give him a little bit more animation, and then we're putting that oat milk in big letters. Oat milk since 1804 or whatever the actual Quaker statement is. Sponsored by the Dusty East India Company. Whatever we got there. But yeah, this was a rough one. $20 million.
$20 million bucks in less than 2 years.
To be fair, that's like $20,000 to PepsiCo.
Exactly. It's nothing to them. But they talk about how they were too late to market. They had multiple reformulations. They wanted to go mainstream first, but then they upscaled as premium. And then all of this ultimately goes to say, PepsiCo totally underestimated how hard it would be to enter the milk aisle. And so this is fascinating when you look at Pepsi, which presumably should be able to enter any category and absolutely dominate it, the series of mistakes that are made there. And I think it kind of underscores things that happen at a large corporate level. You always think like, they have all their I's and T's dotted and crossed, but frankly, they have a lot of failures too, but also shows you just like that space of getting into food and beverage is not for the...
So I want to contrast this with one of my favorite brands. So Patagonia, founded 1973, 48 years into their cycle, or 44 years into their cycle, they introduce sardines in cans inside the food aisle. Now they have sardines and beans just launched. They followed up. We got a sardine in a can of beans.
Do they
are in Whole Foods. They are in every aisle in the sporting goods store. And they said, again, 40 years in, they were like, you know what? We're entering a new category. That category is tinned fish. And then now it's tinned fish and beans, and we are going to not only do that in our existing distribution supply chain, we are also going to go into grocery. And they thought it through, classically executed, crushed it.
Wow, incredible. Well, Patagonia is known for staying true to their values. They're not trying to, be some giant corporate behemoth. I mean, they're pretty much the exact opposite of a Pepsi.
Can you imagine that pitch meeting as opposed to the Quaker pitch meeting makes sense. Like, hey, we're the king of oats. Oats are everywhere now. No one's buying oatmeal. They're buying oat milk. We need to do this shift, and then they somehow mess it up. But then the Patagonia meeting where the guys are all like, what's the new vest lineup for 2024? And the guy's like, the new vest is sardines.
Sardines, that's right.
Well, do we have any insight on how Provisions is doing?
Well, because they launched new SKUs recently, I assume it's good. It's actually funny. So I was giving a talk. I was at like a company doing a workshop 2 days ago, and it's in a similar space since we were talking about Patagonia. And I was like, hey, has anyone tried the Provisions? And it was like a lot of hands. And then I was like, do you typically eat tinned fish? And it was like into the fishwife conversation. But in that outdoor industry, like, looked like people were actually trying it. But when I saw sardines and beans launch, I was like, you don't go from we have all these fish SKUs to like sardines and beans is like some esoteric, like that means you're like really climbing these mountains. Right, like
yes,
you're nutrient optimizing.
Well,
and so I was like, and there's new SKUs. I assume this is actually doing pretty well, but also just placement wise, like it was a conversation for me because I was in Whole Foods like in Newport Beach the other day, and I was like, they like got like a whole thing,
Well,
merchandising is solid.
It's an important thing to remember that like Patagonia has stayed so grounded and foundational to their founding principle. This is all within the realm of like climbers. You need to be insulated, you need to be protected, but then you also need to be fueled when you're on that journey. So it makes sense.
Ooh, yeah, let people go surfing. I mean, Ashwin takes the Patagonia lifestyle seriously.
That's right.
Absolutely classic book. I take it so seriously that I was living in SoCal for 2 weeks and then had to leave because I don't know how you build something like this living out there.
It's not easy. It was funny. There was an excerpt from that was the Wi-Fi password of the company I was at this week, which is but
that's cool.
So this was Marketing Confessional. If you have these stories, if you have the inside scoop on Travis Scott and Nike at this current time, so I'm just trying to make Jordan spit up his drink. If you were inside, Big Oat, any of these companies where you worked on any of these travesty campaigns, we will completely anonymously reveal some of this information. If you hear any of these and you're like, that's a complete lie, I have the other side of the story, let us know. We are equal opportunity lenders.
Indeed. I currently have a lot of people in my DMs from Under Armour, so I've got a video that's absolutely ripping on TikTok. It's crossed 500,000 last night. I haven't looked today, but like, I've got people DMing me who are saying like, I was there, and yes, this is right, or this is the thing. I was at the PGA show this week, and a couple people said they saw it. They're at New Brands, and they were like, I was there for the decision when he endorsed that political figure or went against Steph Curry or whatever. So yeah,
All right, so look, Jordan, you've got it next week. We need the inside scoop.
yeah.
Once the fallout goes.
The rise and fall of Under Armour next week.
Send all cease and desists to one of the other marketing podcasts. You guys can send it to operators. They're actually responsible. Even though it sounds like it's coming out of our mouths. What do we have next on the agenda?
All right, this week we are going to start off dishonest ads. Okay, maybe Antonio, the son of the BrandFathers here. If you could bring up the Chipotle YouTube. All right, I want y'all to take a look. I want you to imagine any of your experiences walking into your local Chipotle. Is Sky in Jacksonville, Florida? Does this chick work at Chipotle or any of the other figures? It has nothing to do with this woman specifically. Is someone smile? First of all, someone smiling when you walk into Chipotle would be
smiling because they're high as hell.
Smiling is completely dishonest. No one is ever smiling me when I walk into a Chipotle. They're like, "What the hell are you doing here? And what do you want?" As they shrug their shoulders and look around with one AirPod in their ear. And so
I will say this is actually what my local Cabo looks like, which is
Well-
somehow all staffed by like,
Yeah.
people who go to like college in Irvine.
Yes. See if there's any other examples in this campaign, Antonio, because I've seen like 5. This is not even the one that I saw at the CFP, but I guess like it just brought up for me. I was in a Chipotle in New York City at 10:45 the other night, and let me assure you, it was not that
dark scene.
It was a dark scene. But there's always like, slop spilled all over the counters, like that chicken back there. If I look at that giant grill behind me, I'm just like, I can't look back there or I won't be able to consume this. And so I'm just wondering, like, what are the most dishonest ads and campaigns that you think in the industries right now that are just completely, separate from what
Hims
they're-
is by far the number one. Hims just be saying shit.
Oh yeah, you're right. Hair loss, as someone who's been through this, they're like, yeah, all you got to do is take a few of these, and you've got a full head of hair, like right now. That's a good one. Hims.
Well, what was really funny to me is number one, you were really pissed off about the Chipotle ad. And
Yes.
you're DMing us. You're like, have you guys ever been to a Chipotle before? And it's like, yeah, of course it doesn't look like this. There is no truth in advertising, in food and fast food advertising. Like they don't even take photos of real food. Like if like Burger King, like that's not even a burger. That's like deconstructed, just like rubber and like various sauces and mixtures. So my question
That's
to you
a good
is,
point.
What
Say
do you
rubber.
expect? Should they be, the question is, if you're on Chipotle's marketing team, should you be making videos where it actually reflects a one-to-one experience of what you're
Well,
doing?
like, that might at least be entertaining. Because I'm like wondering, what was the purpose? What are they gaining from this campaign, right? Because all it is just people being like, "This is not what Chipotle looks like." And also, even if it was, like, what are they gaining from a credibility or a reach or an understanding perspective? Whereas Chipotle is pretty on the nose. Like they've made those napkin jokes, whatever. Like,
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So that's a good point. Let's talk about that for a second. So there was this this product and like viral video that that Chipotle made last year, where they were just like, "Hey, we know you come into our store and you steal all of our napkins, so we're going to take that a step further, and we're going to make you a little Chipotle branded napkin holder that you can keep on the visor of your car." And they made this video, and it had like millions of views, and everyone in the comments was like, "How'd you know? Like, you're outing us." But like they loved it because it's like that's this like subtle like consumer behavior insight that then like goes all the way to the top, and they're kind of like in on the joke. So that was actually a great kind of like product drop. It was a great little campaign that they did. So it's actually funny to see such a big disconnect. Like, the videos that Jordan's talking about that pissed him off are like running in Utah on TV during like daytime TV, trying to get like this
and also,
retiree
maybe
boomer audience
Utah
to come
Chipotle
in.
looks like that because every time I do anything in Utah, it's cleaner and better than expected.
That's
Let
true.
me grab the
That's a
screen
fair
for a second
point.
because I have the ads transparency for Hims pulled up, which just has to be kind of
Let me
has to
just
be
say,
explored.
let me just say on Chipotle, show your burrito. Your burritos are fine. Don't show your whole store like they're clean. Okay, go ahead, Hims.
Yeah, so I opened up Foreplay. We
Oh
popped
my
Hims in
gosh,
there.
Oren. Yeah.
This is outrageous. These are ads that are running on Meta right now.
God, what on earth? Jesus.
Like,
I thought this
I'm not even gonna
podcast-
read these out loud.
This
but
is
like,
rated PG-13.
and this is like we haven't even gotten to the hair. This
Yeah,
is pure blue pill.
Lord.
You know,
Yeah.
like this copy have spontaneous morning sex Hims. Straight up running it as an ad right now.
Hey, next week we need a marketing confessional from someone who's the copywriter at Hims. If you've ever worked on copy in this industry, please.
It's never too late to regrow your hair. How guys in their 30s dodge hair's loss. Guys, I dropped weight because of this. This is one for their like Ozempic, their GLP.
Oh,
Literal
yeah.
GLP ads. This is how men are keeping the weight off.
Oh, yeah.
There is just truly no our goal, your weight loss. Like there's just nothing. They have no.
Well,
zero
yeah,
moral
look,
code
they've
here.
just got they just have the needle, they just have a syringe and the vial, which is wild to me. I've seen people like just injecting their stomach on some of the recent like Ozempic.
Lost 11.7 pounds in 1.5 months, and it's just a needle and an inject.
It's I mean, it is so wild. We should do an Ozempic and all its implications at some point, but
So yeah, I will stop sharing this. But it was just that's just one of those. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me is I'm just like, and I don't even know if it's dishonest necessarily. It's just like, oh, they're really going for it, you know.
well,
I think
yeah, go.
I think especially in the supplement category, you see all of that. Like you can take your top 30 fastest growing supplement brands. You can go look at all of their ads. You can go.
I would do coffee.
All right, we have a child here who's looking for a little bit of coffee. So we are also looking for coffee sponsorships. Thank you, Onyx, who came in last year.
When did you start her on like a espresso regimen? Was it like a one espresso a day from like 3 on, or
Yeah, is she a pour
yeah.
over?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's not a pour over. She won't be a pour over child.
That's right.
well, the kids pour over is a New York Minute. You know, it's
Indeed.
a thing.
Yeah, well, this is a good segue into our fatherhood segment. Because
Yeah.
we're not only grandfathers, we are all active fathers. Single to multiple children.
You know what, baby girl? I'm just as upset about these egregious ad crimes.
All right, we'll give.
Yeah, I too feel this way about the Hims ad.
Indeed. Okay, last couple that were on our list: the Fire Festival, after tax and rebate ads, financial advisors. Okay, I do have a heart. I've got
Now we're getting into straight fraud.
Which one?
Now we're getting into straight fraud, which is actually very timely. Did you see this Utah entrepreneur that got hit? That he pleaded guilty to defrauding, like wire fraud and defrauding investors of like many 20 millions of dollars. His name is Jeremiah, quote unquote, the Bull Evans. And you know these types of guys on Instagram and TikTok, the sales gurus who have these like hype reels where they're just speaking in front of audiences, telling guys like how they can buy 76 Airbnbs and then like turn $1 million.
Jeremiah the Bull is just such a fire tag.
It is absolutely unbelievable. But there's so many types of these characters where they'll have these like,
especially with the full Mormon name, Jeremiah the Bull Joseph Evans. It's like so good, bro. Yeah.
owner of Alpha Influence.
Man's was tithing. I'll tell you that.
Yo, let me show you what he looks like. Antonio, let me share this real quick. Look at this dude.
If I could create an index fund of companies that have alpha in their name and take the short position on them, that would be the best returning index fund. of all
Look
time.
at this man. And I mean, what screams fraud about this? I mean, he totally seems like full of integrity. He is called the Bull.
Who is the Bull? I love it.
And
To be fair, wouldn't want to see him in a dark alley.
not coincidentally, he's got Grant Cardone here next to him, or Google AI thinks that they're one and the same, which should bring up some red flags. Wow.
I thought you were like the big participant in the Grant Cardone master classes.
Well, guys, that's the key to all of my success is because
I
I
mean,
dropped
you
50,000
Who brought
money
Grant
on-
to Nike? I thought that's how we got here.
That was right. Grant Cardone helped me level up, and
And you used to do those one-on-one sessions with Tate, right?
Uh-huh. 10x my output, where I don't
That's when
have.
that's when he shaved the head as part of the.
No, that was when I went to Andy Elliott's sales training. Is when I shaved my head. And anyway, all right. Before we lose all of our young male followers,
I think we
okay.
just gained some young male followers. Bro.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Formula One and Ferrari here. This week, Lewis Hamilton is a legendary driver. I think 8-time champion with Mercedes. Has had a long run with them. Is maybe the most marketable athlete in the world, perhaps next to Cristiano. I mean, he is handsome, British, kind, thoughtful, incredible athlete, fashionable, and they just did some really great stuff. So they were building in the anticipation. This has been known for months now, but this week Ferrari started to roll out these really tasteful, like 10-second clips. This is him approaching the Ferrari building. And I'm not even like endemic to Formula One, so I don't even know all the nuances of Ferrari. But I will say, as a father, you stop going to the movie theater as much once you have kids. And the last movie that I saw in the theater was Ferrari, which was great. Michael Mann. I'm a Michael Mann stan here. And so anyway, I just think less is more. When the moment is big, the athlete is big. Sometimes I think marketing teams feel like they need to add to that and do a bunch of crazy campaigns. And when you have the athlete or the moment is big enough, the creative can be subtle and understated because it's going to go either way.
And I think they actually kind of did a lot. I think they did it in a really tasteful way. So to your point, they did a bunch of vignettes of him like walking in and around. They had an iconic photo shoot with like all this like metaphor and like all this kind of thing that's in there, and him with the classic Ferrari and his look. But really, it was what I liked about this is I feel like they did this because it's F1. Even though it was like the inauguration and all this stuff, they still got all this press and play, and it was like dominant on social media, whether you like it or not. But I feel like we should be rolling this playbook out for everything. Like we get a new brand sponsor, like Jordan signs with Adobe Express. Like I want the photo shoot, and it's Jordan with the coat, holding the laptop, with like the vignette walking up to the Adobe building. I really feel like we should be like, taking this up. Ashwin hires a director of marketing for Oklahoma Smokes, and they're line dancing, they're popping up to the club, they're cutting a rug. You know what I mean? They're smoking a clove, and it's like all in slow motion. I feel like we should really be rolling this playbook out to more places.
We just set out the ashtray, spark a Oklahoma smoke, and let it
take that CBD right to the dome.
Launch that campaign in France, would really hit there.
Ashwin, when Antonio joined you, did he get his badge laid out on the counter with just a subtle, short video?
Was there a photo shoot of this nature?
Oh, we've done the photo shoot. We just haven't rolled it out yet.
Okay, cool. All right, that's coming. All right, we'll be on the lookout.
But this is a good model for a roll. If you have one of these moments, I think this is a good example of they teased it with the clock. They had all these video vignettes. They had a photo shoot that was conceptual and thought through, and then a bunch of follow-ups. And then like he's in there for the first tour. He's like dapping up the team that works in the facilities. This was a really good rollout. And I do think that as we enter this era where like we see more of athletes than anything than ever, like this had a real character to it that like I'd love to see the Charlotte Hornets, do their version of. And I think there's the opportunity to be like, hey, we're making movies here in any fandom.
Yeah, I actually. I think there's a couple of things here as well. Very tactically, I think sometimes we think that we need the big athlete or the big star to be available, and I cannot imagine. I've worked with some big athletes, but like Lewis Hamilton, I cannot imagine what that man's calendar looks like. You get him for 3.5 minutes. He's like. I talked to a photographer one time who.
But to be fair, his job is working for them. But yeah,
and that's fair. That's fair. But like often the content, his job is to be working for the racing team, not the content team, which is always when I have all these team people who DM me, and I'm frustrated with team marketing accounts. I will say I hope that we continue to see this trend. I saw Chelsea FC recently do beautiful storytelling that was a production, and I agree with you, Oren. I think teams need to be taking matters into their own hands and investing in the brand because they're so reliant upon the stars sometimes that they have nothing if the star is injured or hurt or leaves. And this is the type of stuff that you can do that compels your fandom.
All right, what we got next on the agenda?
Well, I actually just one more thing here on less is more on this theme in the sports category, and we'll move on. Ohio State won a national championship with college football playoff. An old friend of mine, Seamus, is a copywriter, worked for Nike Football Digital in the early days, and we cross paths there. And I just thought this was really great. They write for Nike, they do Nike running. If a lot of people love the Nike marathon stuff that was done in New York or Chicago earlier this year, Seamus and Michael are a team who write a lot of their stuff. But he said it's this image, if you can't see, of the team. And it says, we're taking everything, period, one game at a time, period. And he said one dot can make all the difference, whether you're a tuba player dotting the I or simply adding a period to make an old adage take on a new meaning. In this case, one that's authentic to the national champion Ohio State storyline. Oh, by the way, Seamus is from Ohio, so he loves this. But in football, the vernacular is very, very ubiquitous, that it's like we're taking everything one game at a time. That's very much like coach speak. And I love here, as people, we appreciate good copy. It says, we're taking everything, period, one game at a time. And it's like just so good. It speaks to the playoff mentality that they had to go through. It speaks to, taking the full, like the championship, the season. And I think one period or comma can make the total difference in your copy. These details matter.
It's a beautiful thing.
Indeed. All right. Progresso, Ashwin, do you want to talk to us about Progresso soup drops?
Yeah, we will talk Progresso soup drops. First, just a quick shout out to our sponsor Platform. So this episode, a lot of episodes of BrandFathers is brought to you by Platform. That's PLTFRM. They are the ultimate partner for getting into and scaling your brand in retail. And Platform has deep connections that can get you into get your brand into stores like Walmart and Costco, but are most importantly the partner to ensure that your packaging and retail and rollout strategy is set up for success. They have worked with some of the fastest growing brands like Ghost, Bloom, get on shelves into the country. So if you're ready to get your brand into retail, go to oneplatform.com. We will link in our show notes and tell them that you have the BrandFathers blessings.
That was really professional, brother.
Thank you.
All right, soup drops or brand guidelines? What are we going to
Soup drops, soup to nuts. So let's pop open Progresso soup drops. I was sent this 10 minutes before we started recording here. And I was sent to it by a buddy who is not in the marketing or branding world, follows no brands. And he was just like, hey, I'm so confused. What is going on here? So Progresso has announced this product, soup drops, available for cold and flu season. They have made exactly what it looks like, little drops of soup. And so they have this release. It has 132 likes, nothing crazy here. But then
How about the copy, Ashwin?
This other video. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's
soup.
You didn't ask what we delivered. Touche.
Soup. You didn't ask. Snag your limited edition soup drops. They're not for you. Grab the real thing. Soup is as super as nature intended. Okay, so let's go to that video and let's get the audio on this.
Soup drops. It's soup you can suck on. Sorry, did you just say soup you can suck on? It's the comforting flavor of Progresso chicken noodle soup, now in a hard candy. Try it.
What does it taste like?
Like a warm hug turned into a drop. I'm like chicken broth and egg noodles with a hint of parsley. Need more comforting goodness to feel soup-ported this National Soup Month? Curl up with a warm bowl of traditional Progresso chicken noodle soup.
Or you can grab soup drops like me. Guess I don't need to carry these around anymore.
Well, it's only here for a limited time.
Get rid of all the soup spoons.
I mean, we still got a can of soup with the soup drops, so we need the spoons.
Finally, soup I can suck on.
Oren just looks disgusted.
How big are these influencers who are on the collab post?
Let's find out. Let's see.
We have Hey Free Samples with 224,000. They're like these comedian. I've seen them before. Alley Comedy, both around 230.
All right, cool. I feel bad. This is one of the, if this were like people with millions of followers, I would be like, but this for what it was, for where it's at, whatever.
Yeah, so this is, we've talked about this before, probably in our short form, maybe at times in kind of long form too, but this idea that, you can do these product stunts or drops as marketing, right? Something that's designed just to get that social exposure and virality, not something that's actually going to drive sales, very much like the Chipotle napkin holder that we were just talking about. So I think it's like this fun thing. Everyone knows about drinking soup when it's cold outside.
If they did have beef stew, I'd probably order. Not gonna lie.
It's interesting. We might have to try them. Let's see if we can score the drop. But what I
Drop
really
today,
like,
right?
drop is today. I mean, maybe we missed it.
Gosh, we got to register ahead of time. I wonder, is this like a merge? Is this like, hey, you often have cough drops around the same time that you're drinking soup, so we're just gonna give you
Sold
both?
out.
Yes.
We're super sorry, but don't stew. Sold out.
Oh,
Check back next Thursday at 9 a.m.
no way.
Look at that. What I liked there is that influencer. So that video was done as a partnership with Progresso, and obviously they're making this joke product, and so they have these kind of skit comedy creators making this video. But you think about a brand like that, right? It's really hard to do social content for a brand that just like makes soup. And so I'd be curious if they could extend that strategy into just like their regular line of products and get these skit comedians to be like, hey, you can make whatever unhinged content that you want. There are no guidelines for this. Just like get more eyeballs on our soup kind of year round. I think is something interesting there.
I
Yeah.
think there's plenty of. It's so funny because I had this with. There's a pizza oven company that hit me up, and I did some conversations with where it was like they were just showing all of these pizzas coming in and out of the ovens and not particularly good looking. And I was like, hey, if you just make the pizzas crazier, like hey, it's pineapple, pepperoni, fucking Calabrian chili, shoot it so that the pizza actually looks good, and then list out the recipe for the pizza, all of these videos are going to bang and not get 100 views because they are savable and they are shareable. And then the more outrageous you go, the better. And I think the same thing for soup, right? If it was like, hey, this is day one of adding one thing a day to my chicken noodle soup. And it's like, today it's bouillon cubes. Tomorrow it's, paprika. Okay, then the third day they're adding one thing each. Like there's it's so... We think this way, so maybe it's easier for us. But I'm like, it's so straightforward to take any of this content and make it interesting. And brands just kind of have to maybe just immerse themselves more. I don't know why people don't think like this.
So my take on it is because to think like this a little bit, if you work at this company and say there's like some semblance of like professionalism among the organization, and you come into your content like calendar presentation meeting and you're like, hey, on Tuesday we're going to make a video where we like chop up pepperoni with scissors, and then we take like some really disgusting ingredient and we put it on the pizza because we're going to get this like engagement from it. You almost like sound stupid when you're saying it because it's so preposterous. It's like, how is a serious like adult?
Yeah, but that's the full end of it. Because even though that suggests it's still like something appetizing, right? It's just
Sure,
you're
something
doing it in a
more
way that makes
interesting
sense.
than,
Yeah.
like, a margarita pizza. Yeah. But there is this element to. I was talking about this cookie brand the other week called like Cozy or Crazy Cookies or something. And they just like sell home baked cookie. It's like very hard to make great content around that. And they've been doing this shtick where they're like, they have this thing called the milk drawer where they fill up an entire drawer in their fridge or like bedside table with.
Is this where
milk.
that started? I've seen it.
And then they like dip their cookie into it and they're like, oh, just a late night dip in the milk drawer. And that's the entire video, right? Where they open up this drawer, there's milk.
And then they have been crushing it ever since, right?
Crushing it, right? Every
real?
video is like multi-million views. But that's one of those ideas that it's almost like it's hard to verbalize and present to someone and be like, no, like we have to do this. It's going to be a good thing.
Look,
but that's sometimes.
I remember doing this, but I was VP of marketing at this company before. It was at a camera drone company. We hired apes. My concept was like, okay, we're going to do this launch video for this new drone. We're going to hire apes. We're going to train them to fly the drone. We priced it out. It was $40K all in. Apes, training, video shoot, which is expensive but not unreasonable. And I'm pitching the CFO. The CFO is the former CFO at fucking Microsoft North America. And so I'm like, hey, like, you know me. I'm a very performance-driven marketer. We need to do like a fancy launch for this. Here's what we're doing. And he's like, what are you talking about? We're going to get apes or whatever. And I sent the Harry's Dollar Shave Club video being like, hey, you've seen this. Like, do the other, like, and eventually they agreed to let us do the apes. But I think, like, it comes better when you have, like, a history of, like, performance or whatever, and you have, like, at least one frame of reference. But now you have enough frames of reference to be like, hey, look at the cookie drawer company. Like, just do this, right?
Yep.
I feel like there's enough, you have enough reference points to be like, okay, well, why? And again, it doesn't have to be outrageous. Like, that's outrageous. There's the surreal nature of it, but then there's just hey, we could just make this look better and make it informative, which is kind of an easy sell, I feel like. I just still don't understand why there's so much dissonance here.
Look, I literally went through this I was having dinner. I was at the PGO show this week, talking with. This is not the first time I presented a deck at dinner, but
Tracks for you, brother.
I had my I had my computer with me, and I was literally talking to a CMO at a large golf company, like not the largest, but like kind of medium. And so you get sucked into playing the game that the big dogs play, right? So you're trying to compete on like big ads or just, B-roll of beautiful, clubs or pizza or whatever it might be. And so you can lay out this case, which I do often, of like we're moving from this television era to algorithm driven era in smartphones. And people are multidimensional and they want something more than just to open up a social app and see an ad. And so you have to do something that's entertaining or outlandish. And so we were going through some really fascinating, wild places of like taking golf out of its context and putting it in some, very interesting others. But that is what you have to do to get the attention, and you can have fun with it. It doesn't have to be so precious. And I think it's really hard to break out of that. But to your point, Ashwin, when you walk into the thing, I said, well, this is what it would look like. And I laid them out of, 20 slides or whatever very quickly. But like, we went from this era to now this era. Here's examples of things that do well. And this is the world that people are living in. And once you can do that and you visualize it, people can start to understand it and you can justify it a little bit easier.
I'll never forget, Jordan and I were at Nobu, LVMH leadership team. The black miso cod just landed on the table. He's whipping out the deck. You know what I mean? Like it just like, hey, we got a quick 15 slides. Just want to get this concept across.
That's right, y'all. What's his name? The
Arnaud. Yeah, the Arnaud's were there. That's
Arnaud was there, and I said, Arnaud, look, come on,
brother,
give me 5.
Yeah, hold on the cod.
Yeah,
totally cool.
Let me tell you why you need to sell Off-White or whatever. Okay. All right.
What's up next?
Up next, do you want to do OpenAI operators, fatherhood with Kiwi? Ashwin, what do you think?
Yeah, we can hit the OpenAI operators. I thought this was interesting. So everyone knows ChatGPT, but maybe hasn't seen this. So a lot of the conversation that's happening in AI is around these things called AI agents or agentic AI. Really what that is AI doing a set of processes on your computer for you. And so I want to say it was probably a couple months ago, Claude released something where it can kind of like simulate your computer, take control over it and like start to do these tasks. And then OpenAI basically released this thing called an operator browser. And the idea here is you tell the browser something like, hey, I'm planning a flight from New York to Milan, like these dates. Can you pull down some of like 5 different flight options for me, a couple of different travel itineraries? And it starts to rationalize and go through those set of tasks by opening up new windows, searching for things. When it finds information, it pulls it, it like puts it back. You see kind of how it's operating here. And then you can follow its entire flow and like where it runs into, logic issues. And this is still, it's still kind of early with this stuff. And, this thread just details all of the various ways you can do it. But you kind of think about so many of our just rote tasks every day that we need to do, or like things that, Jordan, you and I were talking about having an EA yesterday. There's probably like 70% of things that we need done. We can just like tell this thing to go do it. And if that
and especially for marketing teams where it's like, hey, actually go grab me the analytics from this and that. Hey, what campaigns drop from these brands? What are the highest performing videos in this niche on X and Y? Like all of this research, all this analytical stuff, like all of this kind of pulling, doing variants. Like there's a lot of that can just happen.
Yeah. Guys, one of our former brother and current still, but Bima has built an AI model to do some of that on this stuff, and it's really interesting. You think about rote tasks. All I think about are rote tasks, Ashwin. I never want to look at my email ever again. I never want to itinerary travel, build out itinerary for a travel ever. So this would be absolutely welcome. This is where, actually, I just want to say, since we're talking marketing and creative, we have a marketing audience. There's a lot of discussion around, they used AI to build this ad. This, to me, is where AI will actually be very functional. If you were relying upon, AI to build out your ad creative or whatever, I think that's where you'll lose. I think this is like so much of my job was on rote, terrible, mind-numbing, just time-sucking tasks. And if you can free up, I often was just like, Nike was paying me money for my brain and my creativity, and I was stuck like pulling reports for some executives, meeting that they had. This is where that could do, and your creativity can be freed up with the human brain. Not using AI to build out your creative. I know that will be in certain places, but this is where AI frees up the human brain to actually be creative.
So I think that's a really interesting point. It reminds me of this conversation I was having a few years ago with my cousin, who is a CMO at this like large tech company, and she was asking me how I use like Fiverr and Upwork and some of these other channels, and I was like, I don't really like. Sometimes for like certain like design projects or needs, I'll like go hire like one very specific person, like an illustrator in this style, to do something for me. But I'm like, why do you ask? Like, how do you use it? And she was basically saying like 60% of like her workload, whether it's like designing presentation decks, like pulling data, she doesn't ask anyone on her team to do it. She uses her personal budget to just go hire these people. And she was like, I just don't want to do that work myself. Like, it's crazy that I'm like designing.
I did this forever. Like, that's how I have a same Shopify dev for 10 years. I've never touched a Shopify thing. I pay him. Any site or project I work on, he does everything. And it's like, and it honestly probably knows me better than I know myself or like any of my friends do at this point. There's like a lot of that I think is honestly like a hack, especially if you're like, hey, I want to focus on high priority stuff. I still have to do this as part of my job.
Yes.
Why wouldn't you bring that person around? Why wouldn't you look at that as a cost saves you? It opens you up to do other things.
Yes. I thought about now, like if I know now what I knew back then in my corporate career, having an executive assistant, I would have paid out of my own pocket to do a lot of that stuff because I just think it will free you up to actually just be way better.
Well, also, the other thing is too is like I've had 2 executive assistants as an actual executive. Like companies are like hired onto the team. They are usually shared. It was me and one other person typically. And you also can only ask them to do so much stuff and so much personal overlap or whatever. It's almost better to just have somebody like that's completely where it doesn't matter. Like, you can ask them, oh, also do this personal thing for me. Also do this whatever. Like there's no like, well, should they do it or do the other? It's like, nah, just just run it. Yeah.
Yep. Good point. Well, I'm here for that. Here.
Fatherhood. We want to talk about. I can give the fatherhood intro on this one. So Ashwin and I were on, and similar to the experience we had earlier, his daughter came on FaceTime, and I was like, hey, here's this thing my son and I made. And I pulled out a KiwiKit project. And because I've done Kiwi Kits with my son since he was like 3. And these are basically every month it's a box and you basically make something. And they start off pretty simple. You're making like a stuffed replica of a human heart or the nervous system or whatever. Or you make a little game. But now that he's 8 and we're doing the ones, we usually do like the ones like a year or 2 older. They're just a little bit better. Like we made a motorized pinball game. Like for instance was the one that we just did. And I just want to like note like because of this, because I have done one of these a month. Every month since my child was 3, which means now we've done 60 of these. Like he loves science. He knows how circuits work. We've made catapults. We've made air hockey machines. We've made whatever. They're $20. It's $20 a month or $25 a month, and is probably one of the best values per dollar of any parental thing that I've done. Like this remote control robot, we just made that 2 weeks ago. And he can go, you can deliver food, whatever. He drives it around all the time. And now he's made a remote control car. He now understands how it works because literally you assemble the circuit board. And it's simple. And so I just do want to shout out, like, that is a good tip for parents and something like I would include. This is the pinball machine I was talking about. It's this middle one that's playing now. And there's just not enough businesses like this, right? Like, I think this is the only subscription box I have. I got it because my brother had it for his kids. I just wanted to shout it out.
Oren, is this Mark Rober's company?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think his is different.
Okay, his it looks like Crunch Labs. I can pull that one up, but like I've recently been put on to Mark Rober and the absolute brilliance man that this guy is. He's like a unicorn. So my kids are also, into this stuff, but they get into it when there's figures who are more interesting they get into it when they're more interested through content. And so my kids are watching YouTube or Dude Perfect, and they're friendly, these two. But Mark Rober is this guy who worked at NASA and is like loves science and is absolutely brilliant, but is smart enough that he speaks English to kids and does really compelling, fun content and like fun experiments. And I think you're right. Like his business, then he's doing these like subscription builds. And it's an incredible flywheel, honestly, altogether. As a parent, I'm like, I trust this guy. My kids are learning something. This is incredible.
And honestly, the more the better.
Yeah, totally.
So, is he like the modern, like, cool Bill Nye?
Yes. Yes. He'll be like, I always wanted to know what it was like to swim through a pool of Jello, and he will use like science and metrics to like heat it up, and they find the right place in the United States where it's like cold enough at night to freeze it, but not warm enough in the day that it melts it, and then like we'll show the whole process of getting it together, and then we'll let his nieces and nephews like swim in this pool of Jello once he finally builds it. It's like every kid's dream, it's all these little things. He does one on how to hack every game at a local arcade, like which ones are cheats and which ones are not, and which ones are fighting against you, like the little coin thing you put in a coin. And it's just absolutely brilliant. It's really compelling. It's interesting, and he's doing great work.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I do think the more of this, the better, because I do think as our kids are growing up with AI integrated, I see what that's like for the kids that are slightly older than them. And I am like a massive advocate for obviously things like this, where like they're assembling something, they're learning everything about, okay, these wires go together, this is what a circuit board is, what a motor is, this is what an ESC is, like that kind of thing. But then also just like even little things around curriculum, like I would find it really hard if my kids weren't in like Russian math or Beast Academy versus like traditional math or some of the other math that gets taught. Is like Beast Academy forces you, I don't know how deep you guys are in like math curriculum, but like forces kids to think. There is no memorization. There is no, I can use AI to solve this problem. It is 100% like everything's like these like cubes. And I'm just like, man, if your kids aren't forced into that, then they're just not going to learn how to think throughout the way that school is right now. And it's a really interesting spot to be.
Yeah, it really is. It's fascinating to kind of see how it's evolving. And I just think like we're all fathers now. And if you can make anything that is like challenging or good for your kids, you can print money. I everywhere I take my kids, people are just trying to sell them sugar and crap. There's no recreational birthday party place. There's no like trampoline place that has anything remotely nutritious, like nothing in the realm of nutrition. And I'm obsessed with that, and I want to build something someday that's like, all the stuff that we see, like protein bars and green juice, and like what's the Erewhon for kids actually look like. But anyway.
Wow. You heard it here first. These three fathers are launching Erewhon for kids. Let's go.
Yeah, we know who to call. So yeah.
Not necessarily Erewhon, but like the products that you might get there. Think about it.
My kid loves Erewhon. All he wants to go to fucking Erewhon. That's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, no wonder. That's why this brother's got to continue to get the SpawnCon going, because your kid loves Erewhon.
Until you've had the Erewhon hot bar, people really haven't lived. But anyway.
Indeed.
So yeah, let's just turn this on. Audio.
Hey guys, thank you all for support. Great match again against Lehechka. Was in form. Looking forward to a next matchup with the Carlos, and I just want to take a moment to reflect on what happened on the court. The reason why I did not do an interview.
So basically, he goes on. He talks about what happened during the game at the Australian Open. He also declined doing a post-game interview and kind of speaks as to why that happened. It was basically one of like the journalists had offended like Serbians and was like mocking him, so he was not having it. But what I thought was really interesting is he just went on, and he is probably like he's a little older. You see a lot of the younger sports guys and girls like getting on here, talking to the camera, talking about what went right, what didn't. But this is the first time that we've seen it from someone of like Novak's profile to just like open up, get on Twitter, get on social and be like, hey, this is like how I felt about the game. And what's really interesting about that conversation is it's not mediated by like, the press and all these things. It's this idea of like breaking the fourth wall and like looking directly at the camera, talking to you about what kind of went on here. And the response to that was great. It got shared a lot. And so we're kind of having this conversation. I saw this, and then in parallel, it's inauguration week. You see a lot of like media and content. And what I found interesting, and I'm going to make this as kind of apolitical as possible. This is not an endorsement of anyone, but it's an evaluation of like the tactics that they're using. If you look at a lot of Trump's content that he's putting out there, right? If you look a video here, you don't even have to listen to what he's saying, but it's like, then two videos down.
Shot on iPhone.
It's shot on iPhone. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, Joe Rogan endorsed me, and I like Joe Rogan, and he's a good guy, and we're gonna win. And he just like says some shit, you know. And he has a number of videos like this that are just kind of like shot, like, hey, I'm talking to the camera, like this is what I think the problems are, and I'm gonna fix them, and like that's his whole shtick. But the way that it's like recorded and the way that he breaks the fourth wall, I think is really important. I think another politician who did a really good job with this, with more kind of polish, was Jeff Jackson. He was kind of early on TikTok. And what was great about this is he would kind of like sit in his kitchen and he would talk about issues that they were voting on. He'd be like, hey, I have news for you. Here's what we're doing. Here is like where my stance is on it, and here is like why it's good or bad. And he speaks in a way that is unmediated by some third party asking questions, right? So it's very intentional how he wants to talk and present himself.
Yep.
And I think just as you kind of look across the board, right? I think I was kind of comparing, these two, and then I was looking at like some of Kamala's like TikToks just historically. They made content that very much spoke to like some of the trends and like edit styles on TikTok. So I think they did a good job there, but it was really hard to find a video where she is just speaking in camera, like, hey, I just got like done a day. Like I was on the trail today. I was in North Carolina. Here's the conversation that I was having. And there is just so much value in being able to like break that fourth wall. And this is, I think, predominantly for politicians. I think it is a great tactic, but also, across brands, everyone says like, hey, why do creator brands like really like sometimes hit, and why do like create like founder-led brands that like tell that story really hit? And it's just like people like hearing from other people speaking to them directly about what's going on.
I think one of the most revealing moments of the cycle that you were talking about, or of the political cycle, was when Trump sat down and basically live streamed signing all these executive orders, where he was like, oh, this is blank, blank, blank. And again, God knows what he's saying. Could be right, could be wrong. You could agree with him or not. His synopsis could be right or not. But we've never seen in our lives someone sit down and be like, I'm going to sign a bunch of bills into law, and here's why. Here's what I'm signing. Here's why I believe in it, and move on. And again, you may believe in it, what he's saying or not, but for any politician to do this, or any president to do this, even more so, like, this is the era we're in. It's the first time I think we're seeing it like appealing on a real level, and anyone who wants to be getting their message and their media across, who has a following, should really be paying attention.
100%. To that point, I remember as a kid, I would watch C-SPAN for like 10 to 15 minutes. I'd throw it on and just see what was being said. And
this explains a lot.
In 10 years of doing that, it's like I never once like understood what was being communicated, what they were voting on, because it's just like it's a live stream happening there, but it's like they're not speaking to the American public in a way that's like understandable and digestible and like what it means for you. And so again, I think to Oren's point, whether right or wrong, whether his synopsis is right or wrong, like let's leave that aside. Just the tactic and mechanism through which he's like, sentence signed, this is what it means for you. And it's like, you've really never seen that before.
Well, the creator brand thing's interesting too, because I had this epiphany as I was planning my year, and I was looking at like, cool, I have this new brand, and I was like, hey, I don't post about it. I went through and I counted, and I'm like, hey, I made 5 posts about Valuable on my Instagram feed since it launched in like 6 months. I've posted 148 times or whatever, and of that I've done 5, and I've referenced it 5 more. I'm like, what am I doing? Right? Like when you have the ability to talk to someone every day. So I kicked off, I was like, cool, I'm gonna do 75 days in a row, and I'm gonna talk about it just on TikTok. But also, like, again, the content, what does good, what does bad. Like yesterday, I just did a video on the Valuable Instagram. I was just like, hey, here's just how I came up with this idea of this thing. And people really like it, right? And it can be that simple. And I also think that like that idea of a medium where like, cool, if I did that on my main channel, it might not work. I have a separate account. And I set up a camera, I talked for 5 minutes, I edited in CapCut for 10 minutes. And that's sometimes the stuff that works. And especially if you have an audience or know how to communicate, like really breaking stuff down is just stage one. There's obviously a ton of other types of content to make, but I just cannot reiterate like how impactful some of that is. And anyone, athletes, politicians, anyone who has that built-in base, like I think that's almost a completely unique challenge to trying to build up a following. There's all these people that have them that don't know what to do. And it's just like, just explain shit in the most basic terms and why you believe it.
Yeah. I mean, my example of that would be walking through Dick's Sporting Goods store. Like remarkably 3 minutes of me walking through, just making observations. It is one of the most consistent things that people love to see. because I think
I
it's a
look, I
little
tune into that every time. I see a bunch of your videos. I'm like, I don't really follow sports. I'll watch some of it, just cool. But I see you in a Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm like, I really want to learn what you're doing. It's fascinating,
right.
you know?
Yeah, I think there's something about this unpolished nature, and there's a consistent trend that I think we're talking about in our advertising. We're talking about with the pizza people. Like, we went through this era of 20 or 30 years where everything got really polished. You have a lot of PR pros. This is what you see with athletes. This is what you see with politicians. Again, BrandFathers apolitical here, but the juxtaposition of someone like a Trump who just says whatever he thinks versus some of the other politicians who are got to go through their talking points and all that. I think one of the observations that Scott Galloway made, he called this the podcast election. And the average cable news viewership is around 5 million per night or episode. And Joe Rogan's average listener per episode is 11 million. And one of the insights that he offered that I thought was really interesting
and
is
before you get to clips,
yes,
clips is what
I know is going
200
to
million? Yeah.
totally. And one of the things that he offered was really interesting is like your traditional cable news model, you have someone rolling you through. I see this with athletes all the time. You've got 3 minutes to interview them. What are their talking points? Okay, we're going to throw you some softballs. On a podcast, you were sitting there for 3 hours. You are going to get, you cannot script 3 hours worth of content. You cannot script 2 hours, or to your point, a smaller version is 5 minutes in a row. It's much harder, and it's people don't feel like they're being sold talking points. It's fascinating, and more athletes. Yeah,
Go
ahead.
There was a video going around of there's another Trump video where they were responding to the debate or responding to something, and it was him in his war room, his social media war room. I don't know if you guys saw this video.
Yeah.
But this was like the first time when I was like, I've bought into all the propaganda of like, oh, this guy's just out there tweeting random stuff. But you could see it was like him and his strategist, and they've got a phone. So this one woman's got a phone, and he's just like, oh, they said that, like, tell them that it's da 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 da, and then someone else be like, he's like, oh, okay, no, like. Or actually say that, and they would work back, and then it would be live. And they're like, cool, next one. And I was like, oh, this is like how anyone who has an opinion or a reaction or X in their field should be approaching this. Is like they're round robining it, and then they're firing it. And they have their couple of tropes they go back to. But it was really interesting to see where I was like, actually, this is about as kind of like current and cutting edge as you could possibly get in social. And yet we regard it as like this crazy thing, you know?
Yeah. It's there's some interesting learnings there. And I mean, Djokovic, to just go back to the original video, is, iPhone talks directly to the camera and directly to his audience to
Lighting
just say,
pad.
hey, here's my side of it, and there's just something very different about it. And I just think more athletes should be doing that.
Well, it's the opposite of the basketball interviews, right? Where you get these interviews now, and you basically have basically after the game they'll be like, well, "How do you do?" And the guys will just like don't want to be there. The questions are terrible, and then the only redeeming factor is Joe Mazzulla, the coach of the Celtics, being like, 22 years ago I opened a box, and inside that box was the secret to greatness. 21 years later, and a lot of prayer, and Jason Tatum scored 3 on one leg tonight, and you're like, what is going on? Like either you get like an unhinged personality or like nothing else, and I think that like. We need to rethink those models. It's like, hey, maybe instead of having a bunch of media asking them questions, we just give these guys like the confessional, or they ask each other questions, or we have like, it's just like we need to rethink all of these moments to make them more exciting for those people and authentic for the viewers.
Yeah.
If I have to see Nikola Jokic talk about anything ever again, I'm done.
You just got to do Instagram AMAs, answer top 3 questions and then let it ride.
Totally. Well,
all right. We want to wrap up with our brand guidelines.
Yes. So as you may have noticed from following us on our many media channels, we have a different font and look for anywhere that you follow us, which is good because we are trying to embody the notion of chaos and confusion. So if we get into our top right over here, we will see, we'll see, hold on, where... No, not the net worth and chill, but we'll look at our current assets right now. And so as we call ourselves the BrandFathers, we have no unified brand, right? So we have our YouTube banner up here that has this Gothic script font. We have this Adobe Express made image that our chief brand officer, Jordan, put together. We have some of Oren.
At 1 o'clock in the morning. as we needed an asset for the following morning.
Oren's legacy look making its way into our thumbnails. We've got this like Spotify Brat Summer green going on here, maybe a palette a little more saturated, and then a little bit of AI slop thrown in there too. So kind of all over the place. And so we're going through the process of actually designing a brand identity. We're actually going to have an open call to hire designers to help us design and craft our brand identity for the Brand Fathers. And so we'll give you a little peek at what we're thinking about and what we're looking at. If we want to talk about first just like the importance of this, let's look at a cohesive version. If we look up at the Net Worth and Chill podcast. So you have, three colors here. You have this like canvas, this tan, you have Net Worth as though it's in like the Netflix style font. You have this like green and yellow, and then everything across every touch point looks somewhat consistent, right? Whether it's like the Instagram thumbnails, like the social assets and icons, all of this allows for kind of recognizability as you're going across channels. And then there's also email newsletters and all kinds of other assets. So that's why we are doing this, and the importance of kind of like creating some of these brand guidelines, which we've talked about. And if we get down here a little bit into our brief, so the starting point for a brand book, right? How do you actually get to the logo mark, the colors, the typography? First is understanding, hey, what is it that you're about? What are you trying to do here? So for us, it's a little bit different. We're not a physical product. We are content and media. And what we really do here is we talk about branding and marketing, but we do it with this irrelevant tone. We have this name called the Brand Fathers. We are all fathers. And so we're like, hey, there's this interesting idea to lean into this like pseudo religious adjacent space, right? Pull from some Gothic, like church inspired architecture. There's a lot of segments, whether that's marketing confessionals or like how we're judging brands or like, marketing sins of the week, that we kind of want to lean into. And we want like really cool kind of like artwork done for all of these segments, as well as kind of in our emails. We have our set of deliverables that we're looking for. We have some visual inspiration over here. We give a sense of what the tone of voice is, as well as just general content ideas. So ways that we want to see the brand kind of come to life. So this is the kind of brief, and this is just a starting point. This is the kind of brief that we would pass off to a designer. And then we can kind of talk later about what that process looks like to find designers, review their work. But just a little bit of the behind the scenes of what and why of what we're doing here.
I think worth kind of iterating that like where this starts is where things are actually going to be used. So that Net Worth example is a great one of like everyone wants to make their brand guidelines. If we were just like, hey, we just want a logo, and we want fonts, and we want guidelines of how to use it, that wouldn't actually help us, right? So when we actually go through and make a list for what we want for our brand guide, it's very applicable. It's like, hey, we need a YouTube banner specifically, like that banner. That's a thing for us. We need a Instagram story, 9:16 size format where we can swap out different topics, but it makes visual sense. Like, how are we going to be able to do that with a template? We need YouTube thumbnails, and that's a very specific style. Then we're going to need this also slightly different than what a Spotify cover looks like. And it's really important for us to actually be able to have the fonts really large because of the way that YouTube thumbnails work. Then we need to, hey, when you actually see the logo, how do we come in there, like as people? How would we look at a guest in there? So that exercise of application is probably the most important thing that, again, we've gone through here. And if you are going through an untraditional brand guide, like you're not making it for, a corporate website or whatever, that I would be leading with whenever you go into it. And so I guess that said, we are putting out the open call for people to help us with this. Do we have logistics for how that's going to work?
Well, not necessarily, but we will get back. We're going to
DM Ashwin on any
Yeah.
social media platform. He's at Grand Central Station.
It's going to happen through our Instagram. We're going to put up an open call as a story. We're going to have a form where we take in your portfolios. We're going to do kind of live portfolio review of some of our choices and just kind of what we're looking for. And then we will kind of just highlight that process in a dedicated video of what that looks like.
Yeah, I want to go a little tactical here to draft off of what y'all said. A good brief, which Ashwin has started a good brief here, which is you start with like about what is the thing that we're actually doing. So like this, here's the Brand Fathers, what it is, the goal, then what's the overall goal? Because I think a lot of times people just start very tactically. They go, hey, I need a logo. I get people who come to me all the time. I get companies who come to me. I get marketing people that go, hey, we need a logo for this thing. And you're like, okay, well, what's the context? Or like, oh, we want to rebrand. And it's like, well, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve here? Because sometimes a new logo is not the thing that you actually need. I think you have a good anecdote about that I've heard you say before, Ashwin. Like a lot of times people think they need this one thing when it's quite something else. And so you need about the contact, because if you're going to give this to a designer, they need all the information possible, and you get very tactical. So you start very wide. What is overall, what are we doing? What is the long-term goal that we're trying to achieve? And then what are the very tactical things that we need? And this is where it gets like very challenging. You may say you need a logo, but that logo has to show up as a profile picture on Instagram, which is a little circle. The YouTube profile picture, as I learned, unfortunately, the other night, and have 9 exports from Adobe Express, is like it's a little different than a normal circle. So there are a lot of levels on all these assets. A banner on YouTube is different than a banner on LinkedIn at the top. So there are all kinds of, exports and sizes that are the final, like very tactical thing that you get into.
I think an important point there, especially as we talk about branding, right? If you were designing a personal brand, so Jordan, you've talked about like designing your personal brand. Here we're building a media product, and so the brand brief is going to look different. A lot of the work that we do on the agency side is working with CPG and physical products on their brand identity. So those briefs look totally, structurally they look like this, but we lean heavy into the competitive landscape and how we want to position the product. And there's never this notion, when you're building a physical product, there's never this notion of, hey, we're just going to present to you a logo first in a vacuum with color palette and typography, like on a screen. Once we agree on that, then we're going to go into mocking up the packaging, because you never see, when you see a brand on shelves and you see it in its entirety, right? So the branding matters, like the bottle matters just as much as the label, matters just as much as the logo, and it's all of the elements and how they fit together. And so thinking about, this kind of goes to Oren's point of like seeing the application in the context of where it's going to live. So we live in YouTube thumbnails and Instagram reels and social profiles. I don't care about what the logo looks like on a blank sheet of paper.
Right. It's not enough of us, and we're all like guilty of it at times. You go, I need this one thing really bad. And when you really go through the thought exercise, which is hard when you're pulled in a lot of directions and you're running 1,000 miles an hour, it's like, well, actually, where does it show up and how do people consume it? Because sometimes you don't actually need that one thing. Are you actually just going to post a simple Instagram image with that thing? No, it's going to be in the corner of something, or it's going to be promoting something. And so, it's a great exercise. We're happy to dive further into this. If y'all have specific questions on these, let us know. And there will be more to come on the BrandFathers Open Call Design Contest, which will provide some, we will pay you, but we will also get
$1 million.
Yes, $1 million.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say $100. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Oren's personally funding it with his gain off of Trump coin.
Yeah, I was gonna say if and whoever wins, like the actual prize is you get to drive the G-Wagon once. Feel what influence really feels like.
G-Wagon once from Oren.
And Jordan will be in the back of the Cybertruck filming you.
That's right, and you'll get to run around New York City.
Yeah, you'll get to meet Ashwin at Grand Central Station. You will go to the LES McDonald's. You will go to the Chipotle we referenced earlier. Yeah.
That's right. No, but we're happy to share about you and your work to our audience. So yeah, it'll be a fun exercise.
Opportunity of a lifetime, frankly.
Indeed, quite frankly. Get in on the ground floor with the
So
father.
send us. So stay tuned for that. Send us your marketing confessionals. DM any of us, and we will be back next week.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody.